Hey there, family. Welcome to Midweek Connection. It is an honor to be with you as always. I'm grateful for all of you, every single one of you who have decided, as I mentioned to you regularly, to be conscious, to be awake, to be aware, to be alert, to be living your life free from the confines and the limitations of simply just being human. And here's what's wonderful is that as we go through our spiritual awakenings, we wake up to our full humanity, and at the same time, a full integration of humanity and divinity. They're actually intended to walk hand in hand. They're intended to be in unison and in harmony as we go through this life. It is my desire, my heart's vow, to wake up as many souls as I can along the way in this life that I have signed up for, to do everything within my power to really be the outpicturing of what it can be to be fully conscious, to fully embody, walk out, not just talk out, but walk out your Dharma, and to really locate the true self, to be conscious and to be awake. The expansion of consciousness is a movement over the entire planet. We're all experiencing it. Not everybody's experiencing it the same way. Not everybody is aware of what they're experiencing. So as a result, it can feel strange, feel tumultuous, feel painful. So there's a lot that's happening in the world, and the earth is evolving. The human race is evolving. The universe is correcting itself in many ways, and not everybody is experiencing the beauty of it. If you are aware that this change is a spiritual change, that it's a spiritual and a psychological unfolding and evolution and upgrade of humanity, if you're aware of that, then you feel a sense of that awareness, and you're able to actually enjoy it. You're able to see the beauty of it. Those who are not aware of that as a possibility and aware of that being what it is at the present moment can find it quite daunting. We know that transition doesn't mean trouble, but a lot of people feel troubled in their souls by transition. Transformation is to change the form, to go beyond the form. In order to do that, there needs to be a change in the formula. As Einstein so wonderfully said, you cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created the problem. And we're not as much solving a problem, I don't think, as we are just going to the next level of our human evolution. And I'm so grateful for that. We're waking up. We're waking up to the true reality of what it is to get free from the prison of concepts. It's a conceptual prison. To stop being conned by the constructs of this life. And instead breaking free to get to the next level. And that's really what spiritual awakening is about. And we're all in the midst of what we've called, at least at First Unity Spiritual Campus and One Love Consciousness movement, Spirit Expressing. This is our Spirit Expressing season. So as we're going through the chakras and we're talking about Spirit Expressing, and we're also talking about the power of awakening, which is Dr. Wayne Dyer's book, I wanted to do a series on Wednesday evenings, midweek, that would undergird that, support that in some practical ways, as we have called this, more of a practical guide to authentic spiritual awakening. Because it's one thing, and we'll talk about this a little more in a few minutes, it's one thing to have sort of an event that makes you feel high, sort of gives you a fix. It's another thing to experience actual change, measurable, quantifiable change that causes you to be able to live at a different level. So the thing is that a drug will induce a feeling of change. A lot of times that just cuts off our ability to think. It shuts off the inhibitions and causes us to experience some level of what we would think of as freedom. But it's just a drug and it wears off. The same is true for these events that tend to take place. If there's no lasting change, then we become addicted to the modality and the feeling, instead of experiencing actual evolution and growth. So this is a practical guide to authentic spiritual awakening. We have already talked about what spiritual awakening is, at least in my estimation. These are just my personal opinions. We've talked about spiritual enlightenment and finding clarity, spirituality and enlightenment, and sort of the difference between spirituality and enlightenment, finding clarity about the two, spiritual awakening versus psychic awakening. And if these are some that you have missed, you can always go back to the archives, and you're welcome to go do so. And we will organize these videos also later in their own little envelope on YouTube. We talked last time about what is the ego and the spirit, the difference between the two. And then I wanted to share with you something that, for me, it's just practical. And I wasn't planning on doing this. Actually, this is going to push this series out an extra week because, we're on the crown chakra this coming Sunday. Right this week, we're in the midst of working with and clarifying, clearing out the third eye chakra, which I call the primary eye. This subject is something that I wanted to come back to because of reading a little bit more about Carl Jung's description of individuation and understanding individuality, true self. Carl Jung did a lot of work around true self, false self, constructed, and original. So I wanted to look at a subject that, if I was going to title it this evening, and I have, here's what happens during spiritual awakening. This is essentially what is taking place. Now, this is not going to go into the details of the different emotional experiences. It's just going to deal with what is really happening underneath. When you're having a spiritual awakening, what is transpiring is a real separation for clarity's sake, not separation as in division, but separation for clarity's sake between the ego and the true self, or the ego and the spirit. The more spiritual part of you is the more eternal you. The more temporary you is that ego. And so here's what's happening when we're experiencing spiritual awakening. Most of us think of ourselves in terms of our ego. It's that little voice in our head that defines who we are based on all of these externals. We know we've talked about ego before, how the ego is answering when somebody says, "Who are you?" And you start describing you. I am Jon Scott. I am a male human being. I am a husband. I am a dad. I am a reverend. I am a this. And this is really the ego. This is why I want us to understand the ego is not bad. It's not inherently bad. It just doesn't need to be in charge and in the driver's seat of your life. When we start to really embark on and get deeply into spiritual awakening, something really amazing happens. The ego starts to really give way to a deeper sense of self, true self, often referred to in most writings as the spirit or the higher soul. This transformation concept really is echoed in the Tao. I love the Tao, the Tao Te Ching. When it talks about the lower soul being refined into something greater, or being redefined or transformed into higher soul. So it kind of positions us to see that there's a graduation, and the word graduation has within it the word gradual, which means in its space, at its own pace, growth, not just instantaneous. There are some instantaneous things that happen, but most of our real evolution, that word evolution speaks to the time it takes to grow. Transformation, most of the time, especially anything that is radical, takes time. Also, there's an experience often of discomfort as you go through the transformation process. But in Taoism, we see that there's the lower soul that is refined into something greater, or a greater soul. And I like to say this is the process of getting involved. And if you get involved with spirit, you will evolve with the spirit. And then you make a conscious connection with the energy that is needed for you to completely unfold all that you are, to make your true self available to you first and foremost. And this is what leads me to Carl Jung described the journey of individuation as a deeply personal quest to become our true selves. we are fully and completely unfolding. Now, this doesn't mean that you are necessarily living a lie. When I say true self, I want to say a complete self. I like to say the word complete, or your dharma is complete, your unfolding is complete, in that the butterfly is not worse or terrible when it's a caterpillar. Caterpillar is a part of its journey, but it's not the end result of its full development. Inside of that caterpillar is the potential to fly. But in its initial iteration, it doesn't look anywhere near like something that could take flight. I love to use this as an example because inside of you, your life, each year group that you've lived, some of you have lived multiple generations. Others of you are younger and maybe haven't. But through every single phase of your life, you have experienced some level of transformation. Evolution and transformation are a part of the process of living. So Carl Jung talked about becoming your true self and how it's a quest, it's a journey. It's important to understand that the transformation doesn't typically occur in one grand event or grand sweeping revelation even. Revelation is also happening at a pace and in its own space. Here a little, there a little, as is mentioned by St. Paul, where he talks about going from glory to glory, strength to strength, faith to faith, here a little, there a little, building on the building blocks. See your life like building. You're building a house. There's a foundation. There's walls. There's drying it in. There's the creation of the interior and the sealing off of the exterior. It takes a little bit of time sometimes. Now, sure, there are some breathtaking moments. I've had some epiphanies that were just like, bah, this could be what you could call a born-again experience, but a born-again experience could take place multiple times in your life. So there are those breathtaking moments, like when you're hiking in nature and suddenly all of a sudden you feel a deep connection with the rest of the world around you. Or somebody mentioned to me just the other day, they had a powerful psychedelic experience that sort of caused them to be able to exit the logical, rigid mind and be able to move into what they would call an expanded realm. And these instances of psychedelic experiences or feeling a deep connection to the world around you, even to your fur babies that you have in your life, these moments of exhilaration are very eye-opening, but they often don't last long. I mean, if we start to rely too heavily on those experiences, we actually hold ourselves back from true growth because we become addicted to the modality. Instead, the path to authenticity is usually a gradual, ongoing process that is filled with small insights, sort of gentle shifts that guide us toward who we ultimately truly are. And if we become dependent on the modality, we actually stifle the progress because we become slaves to an event. So I don't want you to think that I'm against psychedelics or against the use of plant medicines for shifting the mindset. I'm certainly not. I think they're great. But the point is that even meditation and prayer can become an addiction. And then you become a slave to that event instead of the ongoing process of evolution. So instead of being event-driven, be evolution-driven. This is what I mean by authentic awakening. Authentic awakening is something that ultimately, truthfully, you can measure. Now, there's an immeasurable part, there's an invisible part that's taking place, but my point is you can measure it in human terms because you actually experience a change in attitude, a change in outlook, a change in the way you think, because remember, your thought style will ultimately determine your lifestyle, as C. Reggie Rogers says. I totally believe that your thought style, if you don't like the lifestyle you have, the only way to really shift that is to change your thought style. So as you grow and as you unfold, instead of being addicted to those events, those moments of great stimulation and exhilaration, ask yourself, what really changed in my experience? See, our understanding of spiritual growth shows that it unfolds in stages. It's a lot like the seasons that we experience in our world. Remember that much of what you're experiencing in this Earth project is just a projection of what you're experiencing on your internal Earth project. A peak experience can be extremely uplifting. It can leave you feeling very much connected to a blissful joy. but that only lasts for a little while. It's a bit like those powerful moments that take place, intense moments that take place in church services or in a deeply spiritual session. That deeply spiritual session, again, could be through psychedelics, could be through meditation, transcendental, or any other kind of level of meditation, or intense church services. I grew up in the Pentecostal Charismatic Church where we had very consistent, ongoing, transcendent situations and transcendent experiences where we called it getting in the Holy Ghost, being in the Spirit. And there was this goosebump. There was this palatable experience when we had our inclusion conference just a couple of weeks ago. Those experiences we had in all of our evening sessions and during our day sessions, those were what I would call intense moments of exhilaration. But the quantifiable and measurable change doesn't happen in those moments. Those moments sort of lubricate the soul to receive the seed that's planted into the soul so that from the womb grows the conception and that conscious contact with a higher way of being and showing up that can be birthed in your life. But see, even when you experience, and I know this may feel uncomfortable to some, but the lubrication of the body leads to intercourse. That intercourse experience often leads to an orgasmic experience. But you all know this, that after the orgasm, you're normally left tired and drained. And the only way that there's quantifiable, measurable progress seen is if there's a conception that happens. The conception happens in the womb of the woman, but still the incubation period is 9 months or so. All right. That's my point, is that even these exhilarating moments are really planting seeds within our souls, the womb of our souls, but it's up to us to nurture that thing until we bring it into full birth. Hopefully that makes sense to you. You know, we get that rush of emotions, that intensity, but unless there's a consistent practice to build on that moment, it often doesn't lead to lasting change. And this is why I think that we want to architect for our life authentic and real awakening, spiritual awakening. This is where most people, or not most, this is where many people get stuck. We get stuck in chasing that high from that spiritual experience, chasing that high from that psychedelic experience. We hope to feel fixed, but really all we get is a fix. And as soon as it wears off, we're looking for another fix, and we find ourselves slipping back into the same habits and the same ways of thinking shortly after that experience. But for it to be lasting, I need to be able to have a sense of discipline, a practice, a real practical practice that can lead me and does lead me toward real, effective, and beautiful change. Now, I'm not dissing these exhilarating moments. I'm not dissing these intense emotional rushes. I think they're important. In fact, one of the things that I think is wonderful about Spirit and Truth Sanctuary and even about First Unity Spiritual Campus is that we are really tying in a lot of that praise and worship, charismatic, Pentecostal, musical, emotional experience with a higher consciousness and expanded consciousness message. Even our singing is not as much about getting God to bless us as it is rising into the higher consciousness of knowing that we are an original blessing. That power that's in that is palatable. And as you sit and you sing, and as you stand and you sing and you dance together, rejoice together, even lifting up our hands. I mean, we lift up our hands in sort of surrender, but also lifting up for a great hug from the universe. Those experiences are vitally important. But I'm coming back to those experiences alone cannot lead to lasting and fully effective change. Now, this is a common struggle because you have those fleeting magical moments that seem like they could change your life, and yet you quickly find yourself right back where you started, right back in the same habitual practices. Real transformation is rarely instant. It calls for, in our human experience, time, patience. It calls for commitment without attachment, and this is important. To be committed to the complete unfolding of yourself, be careful that you commit to it, but you don't become attached to a particular way that you think it's going to have to look. Let go of the need to control what you're going to look like at the end of this transformation. I go back to the caterpillar and butterfly again. I don't think the caterpillar has any idea of what it's going to look like at the full completion, at the completion of its unfoldment. So don't be stuck in that. Be committed to the process. Be committed to a daily practice, nurturing your awareness, nurturing your spiritual growth. Be committed to spiritual awakening, but don't be attached to the outcome, because no one knows what the outcome is going to be. People will say to me, well, what can I expect at the end of my spiritual awakening? I have no idea for you, because for you, it may be different, or it would look entirely different than mine. Your spiritual awakening is yours. It's individual to you, as I mentioned a moment ago. This was Carl Jung's study on individuation. It is an individual experience that no one can call except for you. And you can't even call it from the beginning. You will have to wait until it unfolds to go, oh, I have wings. I can fly. So real transformation is not instantaneous most of the time. It requires time. With that time, it requires patience. It requires commitment. It's a daily practice. It's creating a discipline. I am a disciple of my Dharma. I am a disciple of my unfolding. That disciple, the word disciple and discipline run hand in hand. In other words, I'm taking on a vow of discipline and being committed to the process of making a habit of waking up. Because again, what we practice becomes a habit, and our habit becomes our, you guessed it, habitat. That's the way we live. It's the building, the house that we build around ourselves, or for us to abide in. It's a gradual journey. It's not a quick fix. And that unfolding takes dedication, and it takes gentle commitment. Can you hear those words? Gentle commitment. What am I saying? Be patient with yourself in this process. Don't stop short of your miracle, but be patient with yourself in the process. Give yourself grace. Give yourself mercy. Give yourself compassion and kindness. Respect the fact that the you that you currently are is probably a little afraid, a little anxious, a little worried, because we identify with what we are currently. And when we think about growth and transformation, even the word transformation can be kind of scary. It is dangerous and scary for sure to your ego, because your ego is very much attached to the identity of who you've been. But the Spirit is always desiring to unfold and bring us into vision. This is why fear pushes until vision pulls. Fear pushes until vision pulls. So allow that fear, as Jesus said to Peter at one point in time, he said, "Get thee behind me, Satan." The word Satan there is the same word as devil or adversary in the Old Testament of the Christian Bible or in the Hebrew Bible. And it just means adversary. That is adversarial to me, fear instead of faith. Fear, get thee behind me and push. Because fear pushes until vision pulls. So I'm transmuting fear into fuel to push me forward toward my faith journey until my faith fully unfolds as sight. This is the power of being committed to your full awakening. But it takes dedication, and it takes gentle commitment. I am gently committed to this process. I am determined, but I will not dehumanize or harm myself in the process. I won't judge myself. I'm going to be without judgment. I'm going to be beyond judgment. I'm going to dedicate and commit myself to this, but not be attached to a particular outcome. And I'm going to see myself fully unfolding as my true ultimate self. So the spiritual awakening leads to transition from ego to a deeper sense of self. It's often called spirit or higher self. The transformation aligns with the Taoist concept of where the lower soul is refined, not confined, actually released from its confining state or its incarceration, release of that lower soul and refined into even a greater soul. Carl Jung's work on individuation emphasizes the process of becoming the full, authentic version of your true self, your oneness self. Your spiritual awakening typically does not occur in a single dramatic moment. It's actually a gradual process. Those peak experiences that we enjoy, which are fantastic, they're orgasmic, they're climactic. They have profound connections that we experience. Those intense moments are temporary. And they are a means to an end, not the end. So seeing them that way and being able to enjoy the dance or the intercourse, the making of love, we could call it celestial whoopee, right? Those are temporary. Spiritual growth unfolds in stages. It's similar to changing seasons rather than through immediate and lasting shifts in consciousness. If you continue in my word, as Jesus said, if you continue in my word, in that word there is logic, you continue in my logic, you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. That speaks to the reality of a gradual situation. Continue means it's ongoing. If you continue in my logic, you're going to know the truth. In other words, you start to think as God thinks. That's all that means, is to continue in my logic. Study the logic. How does God think? Einstein said at the end of his journey of learning all that he learned, I just want to think like God thinks, which is outside of every box. In fact, every box is a result of people utilizing the power that they have that's infinite to create the box. So I'm going to continue thinking like God thinks. I'm going to make that a discipline in my life. And as a result, it's going to ultimately make me free. I'm feeling that freedom. And then many individuals experience confusion after peak moments, and they return to old thought patterns. They return to something that feels more familiar. I'll say this in closing. If you look at the story of the children of Israel leaving Egypt, the biggest issue that they had to deal with there, the biggest issue was when they left Egypt, they felt uncertain. They felt afraid because they couldn't see clearly. They couldn't see past their concepts and their perceptions. So they left what they called security. It was slavery. But they wanted to go back to it because of the uncertainty of the wilderness. Be careful about that. The butterfly, if while it's in process in the cocoon and it feels isolated and it feels dark and like it can't see clearly what's on the other side, it's in its desert or wilderness space. If that process is interrupted, it aborts the entire mission. And as a result, it no longer will exist. So sometimes we have a tendency to experience confusion after peak moments, because we'll feel the highs start to go back down and we're like, oh man, it's Monday, right? For folks who go to church on Sunday, it's Monday, now what? Sometimes we'll go back to old patterns and behaviors despite feeling a life-changing insight, a truth. A lot of times if we don't hold that truth and really allow the meat of our soul to be marinated with that truth, it doesn't lead to real transformation. True transformation, please hear this in closing. True transformation requires time, patience, dedicated gentleness, gentle unfolding of awareness. Be easy on yourself as you change. And this will lead to what we are calling authentic spiritual awakening. It feels good to be waking up and to have a process through which we can do that, to lock arms and more than that, lock our hearts with each other, to walk toward the promised land of our awakening. I love you so much. I appreciate you being here. Thank you to all of you who've heard the call, for so many of the folks down here, including us a little, thankfully not near as much as others who've been affected financially as a result of this hurricane. Thank you to those who have said, you know what, I'm going to give to One Love toward a little more relief in that regard. I appreciate those who are willing to do that. The ways to give are on the screen as we start to exit. We also have a hurricane relief fund that has been set up through First Unity Spiritual Campus that specifically goes to others besides Carrie and I. It goes to others who have all kinds of major issues going on. And we have a beautiful angel within our congregation who has been willing to match up to $2,500 to help those in need around us. So I want to say thank you. And thank you to those of you who give to One Love to keep this ministry going. The ways to give will be on the screen on the way out. Speaking of the screen on the way out, I hear the music getting started. So I'm going to get up out of here now. Go and make it a great evening because